Welcome everyone. I'm going to talk about playing Airsoft games and LARP games and how this can be connected together. My name is Máté. I'm working as an IT technical support engineer in my civil life. I want to talk a little bit about myself. I started to play role-playing games since I was a child, and these role-playing games were on the computers, right? Because that was the easiest access point back then, and I started back in '98 basically with Fallout 1, when I didn't even speak English that well. And then throughout the years, you know, my English improved. I started to play more and more and get into tabletop games as well. And then, by a chance, a friend of mine asked me to go to play Airsoft, you know, with some friends, nothing serious. That was back in 2015. After my first Airsoft game, 3 days passed, my first replica was bought because I fell in love, right, with this hobby. And then I get into a team. And the teammate of mine introduced me to the Stalker series, and we will touch on that later on, which was brand new for me, to be honest, because it involved live-action role-playing. You brought a character, and you needed to play that character, act like your character would in a situation. And this is how I started out, and this is how I get familiar with the Airsoft PORTAL11 as well, who are organizing these events. So before I move forward, I want to ask the audience as well, did anybody talk about Airsoft in Portal before me? Do you know? All right. All right, thank you very much. So, can you put your hands up if you played an Airsoft game and you played a character before in those games? All right, so most of us. Excellent. Is there anyone here who only played Airsoft and not tried Fantasy LARP? Everybody tried it. Separately. All right, excellent. So I want to start with a short story. So I want to paint this picture. First game ever. I arrived to the zone. We did some missions. We rested. We did everything what we could as a stalker. And then we went out for an evening mission. Mission was simple. We need to go from point A to point B. And these guys know about what I'm about to say. Yes, no need for water, exactly. So imagine it's pitch black, all right? You have your lamps on your guns, you have your headlamps and everything, but you can only see limited areas, which is illuminated. And all of a sudden, one creature arrives, and the second one, and the third one. And you know about the creatures, but you never saw them in your life before, right? So we hunkered down, and it gave me such a deep immersion to this world because I was genuinely afraid. I know I was in a safe place, but come on, it was amazing feeling to hunker down next to a car, which turned out to be radioactive, by the way. But that's another story, you know, rookie mistake. But this is just one night, first game, without any prior knowledge, and I just fell in love with this series, to be honest. So for the organizer, there is a list of events. We have the zone, we talked about it before, and there are other games like Mad Max, Terminator, which is a mix of Milsim and LARP event, actually. Then we have some Milsim events as well, like Lone Survivor, which is played in a pretty big area. It's pretty nice up in the hills, and it's a nice forest. But in the past, there was a game called Isle of Joker as well, which is a Batman villain-themed LARP game. What this game tried to provide is an experience like an action movie or a horror movie, all right? Scenes from these are part of the organization's goal, and there are these scenes happening from time to time. You don't know when they are coming, but they will. And in the meantime, you have the opportunity to play your character and, you know, do your day-to-day stuff. I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with Airsoft, but what is Airsoft? Airsoft is a hobby, mainly, and it's played with a low-energy air gun. It uses compressed air or gases to prepare a BB, which is usually 0.2 to 0.3 grams weight. The replicas usually mimic a real firearm, but you can see other type of replicas as well. For example, the pulse gun from Alien. I know it exists. It looks cool. But in my opinion, these replicas functions the same way as a foam sword would in a fantasy game. That's clear that you have a longer reach with an Airsoft replica than a foam sword usually, but not always. That's true. So the other thing is, we actually use LARP-safe melee weapons as well, and not just knives, but other type of melee instruments as well. So how does a normal Airsoft game look like? What is the schedule? People read the description of the game and get familiar with the backstory. They should read the description and the backstory and the rules involved at home before the game. They decide they like it, they will register, they arrive at the area. And what is extremely important, it's always called out, safety is first. You always need to wear eye protection, which, you know, protects your eye, because you only have one. And thank you very much. Usually two, then I'm so sorry. But anyway, this is the most important thing in an Airsoft game. This goes on, and this will not come off until you leave the area, because we need to protect your eyesight. Then everybody arrived, eye protection is on, everybody prepared, put on the equipment, what they're gonna need, and there's gonna be a briefing where we talk about what's gonna happen. We talk about safety rules, we remind everybody for different rules like medic rules and so on. And then you are in game. As soon as the briefing stopped, you're already in game and you have a chance to be engaged immediately. And everything you do in these games, you do it in game. So that means if you need to build a campsite, you do it in game. If you need to sit down and eat your lunch, you do it in game. And that should be the whole idea. When the game finishes and the official game end is introduced, then you will leave the area, take off your eye protection and go home, hopefully with a lot of good experiences. Oh yeah, and some bruises, but it's usually fine. So again, and this is in every single briefing, this is in every single description. Safety is first, and this is the most important aspect of these games, especially the eye protection and everything else. Additionally, how you feel it, if you want to wear gloves, if you want to wear long sleeve clothes, that's up to you, but the eye protection must be on, all right? But luckily, the eye protection is the only mandatory thing what you need to start out with these games, because I know people who started and completed a full Airsoft LARP game without a weapon, all right? Because you bring characters and you play characters and you might not be a combatant character. On the other hand, you might be shot at, so you need to consider this when you move in the zone. But the main goal of these games is that you characters are playing against characters or together with characters, and the interactions and the fighting is part of that experience, basically. The other thing is you need to make sure you don't overdo it. And what I mean, you need to know your physical limitations, because the area where we're playing is safe, but there can be hills between you and your mission. And you need to hike there, and you need to come back. So you need to make sure you look after yourself. You make sure you don't overdo it. So the reason I have put milsim games here as well is because if you think about it, you're a civilian, and most of the people who play Airsoft do not have military backgrounds. However, if you act like a soldier or a medic or a team lead or HQ, then you are role-playing that character, right? A good example is being a medic. And as a medic, you can do various things, but if you want to immerse yourself into this type of character, you will use props, you will make sure you act like a medic, you try to support your team, and fighting is not the first thing what you do. And I did this multiple times. I really enjoy being a medic, to be honest, because it's fun and make sure my team is ready to go forward. It's a pretty awesome experience, in my opinion. The other thing, before you go to the game, and I know I talked about reading the summary, but it's always good to research the source material. For example, Stalker. There are multiple video essays, there are articles. So even if you don't play the game, you can read up on the story, you can read up on the word. Or if the game is like based on a film or a movie, Mad Max, Terminator, Lone Survivor, watch the movie. Because it will give you a really good idea and help you immerse yourself into that character, what you bring to that particular game. So the Stalker game series is going over 11 years now. So there's a really rich background story in the zone, which was created by the players and the organizers. And anybody you ask will have a different story, and they will remember other things, but you will have a lot of memories if you started back when this whole series started out. In these games, there are always multiple factions. So what means before you start the game, you will decide which faction you want to join first, and you will prepare the character accordingly. So if you're a stalker, you will dress up like a stalker, and you prepare yourself to do what a stalker usually does, goes and try to find a lot of money. But if you're in a different faction, like bandits, then you will act like them. Your goal is not to do missions. Your goal is to try to rob people. You saw the money, and there's an economic aspect of these games, but I have a story for this, that you can change factions, and you can bring multiple characters on the same game. You just need to make sure that you have the appropriate clothes for it. For example, two of my teammates, bandits, they stole a box, bringing it down from the hillside. They were made. Basically, they knew where they were. So what happens, they start to radio it in. They ask for reinforcements. But my friends are listening to the radio as well. So what they did, they just sneaked past everybody, went back to the camp, hid the stash, changed clothes, and joined the reinforcement. They actually went with them for a half an hour and tried to find the bandits. But they were the bandits all along. You can do that. And throughout the games, you can change your faction as well. If you like a faction better than your starting faction, there is a transition. And there are methods how you can transition from, let's say, a stalker to clear sky, or how you can transfer from a stalker to voyeur or freedom. All right? you have this chance on these games. So, a question here, where to start, which games to start with. I would say Stalker or Mad Max, if you have a chance, because it's easy to get into the world, and then you have a chance throughout your playtime playing this character to get to know the backstory of other characters, get to know the history of the zone, and then you can move on basically to a longer game like the marathon, you know. Or actually, this is my opinion, but if you like, you can start with the marathon as well. It's hell of a fun, I can tell you that. All right, so I mentioned I had multiple characters, and just give some examples. My character, who I'm dressed as currently, is Nemesis, and he's with me for a long time now. He started out in a zombie game, actually, in Raccoon City, because I became the Nemesis from those series. That's how my nickname was given. And then I kept it, but I had a mercenary called Matt as well, who only spoke English in the zone, which introduced some conflicts because most of the people only spoke Ukrainian, right? So I needed to find the people who can translate for me and give me the chance to play the character as he progressed through learning the language of the locals as well. All right. Now I have a couple of stories just for examples which were really memorable for me, and give you an example how this game goes and what can happen. We ended up in a really tight spot. This was with Matt, all right, the mercenary, which is funny because my name, surname is mercenary as well, if you translate it to English, by the way. But what happened is we got into a really tight spot, and we had a medic with us who had some combat drugs. The rule was, if you take this, you can go for 15 minutes, no wounds will count until the 15 minutes is up, but when the 15 minutes is up, you will collapse immediately. So, took the drugs, went on a rampage, came back, and right around the time 15 minutes was up, I tried to go down on a small hillside, but I tripped. People were under me on the hillside, and the first thing what Judith, who is this tall, tiny girl, big heart by the way, jumped up, I will catch you. And I'm 170 kilograms, and she tried to catch me. So luckily there was a Nemesis-shaped hole between two people, and I just plunged through. Nobody got hurt, me neither. But I was really angry at Judith. So I asked her, don't do that again, please. This is one story. The other one, this was, I believe, 2 years ago. We completed a mission. It was a long mission, 3 hours long or something like that. We had some wounded, but we arrived back to the bar. And everybody was super happy because we completed a mission, actually. So, you know, people were drinking and all the weapons was lying around, you know. And all of a sudden, one creature arrived, and a second, and a third, and a fourth. And all of a sudden, the whole area was covered with creatures. And you try to hide, but, you know, you did not have a chance. And this fog started to come into the campsite. And it was from a horror movie, guys. Like, my heart is pounding. I'm pretty sure I was the last person alive. So I was hunkered down behind the car, and I hear the voice of the commander, Kobzos. Is it you, Nemesis? I said, yes. You need to take me away from this place. I don't want to. Come on. Okay. And as soon as I stepped out behind the car, you know, they just jumped on me. I died on the spot. That was awesome. I'm never gonna forget that night. And anybody who experienced that knows what I'm talking about. Another story. This came from a Terminator game. We were part of the military, remnants of the military. And there was a joint task to try to blow up Skynet's generators, all right? Terminators everywhere. Shots flying all around, and we used tracers, so it looked like actual laser and plasma rifles firing. Awesome sight. Huge battle. We blew up the generator. You know, big bangs, 3 of them. All right, excellent, retreat. Like, all right, retreat. Start to run away, all of a sudden, go back for the wounded. So, okay. We turn around, start to walk towards Skynet, the base. And there are Terminators everywhere. You know, but with the mask and everybody's turned off because Skynet was disabled. And you're just walking between the Terminators and you don't know if they will come back live, right? Because you don't. But you hear the wounded behind the building. So you go there, apply the bandages. Can you walk? Yes, let's run. And this was towards the end of the game. Everybody was super tired, but you don't care. We get out of there in 2 minutes. But that so intense feeling, you know, that you are there and fighting against machines you cannot defeat otherwise. And we actually brought out everybody. I'm pretty sure we didn't left anybody behind for the machines to turn over and turn against us. Another story, this is from Mad Max. And I played this character who was wearing a mask and a big armor, having a two-handed hammer with him. And we knew something was up. It was towards nighttime, and everybody was invited to join for a big fight in the arena, all right? And the arena was this ring which was made from cars. In this game, there were, I believe, 5 working cars. So, you know, for immersion purposes, but the headlights were on. And this arena was created from those headlights and, you know, surrounded by the cars and people watching the fights. And my teammates, we snuck up, you know, a little bit late, and we stayed behind in the shadows. Nobody saw us, and we were watching. And things started to turn hairy really quick, which means they started to hunt people for meat, which happens on Mad Max games. So I stepped out from the shadow, and I'm not gonna forget the face what this player had when all of a sudden myself with a mask and a huge armor just stepped outside and bonked him on the head with a hammer. And then we started to shoot and run around, and I'm pretty sure there's still a Nemesis-size hole in one of the bushes where we ran away through, so maybe it's already healed, I don't know. This year I'm gonna have another chance to create a hole in the bushes. So, another short story, and this is really for the immersion's sake, because you do everything in game, and you get familiar with your equipment. I always had my sidearm on my side, all right? That was always with me, even when I went for a shower or whatever, so I can grab it if I need it. Now, the game finished. 3 days later, I'm in the office. And there was this stressful meeting going on in the office. And what I found is I started to look for the handle of my pistol, because habits start to kick in, you know, because that was the one thing. Yes, this is ready to go. All right, I have it loaded. I didn't have it loaded, but when you realize that kind of immersion is awesome. So I love this story because it's so true. And, you know, I spent the 10 days in the zone. I lost 7 kilos, I believe. So it was pretty good for my health as well, obviously. So, and this is the conclusion of this talk, that the main goal of these games is to people get new experiences and have these stories, what I told you, these are just snippets of those stories I have about these games to tell for years. And it doesn't matter if you win or lose, in a sense, because there are no points counted. You are winning with these stories and experiences and the knowledge and how you grow your character over the years. And this is one main difference between a LARP airsoft game and a normal airsoft game. Because a normal airsoft game like CQB, Capture the Flag, Team Deathmatch, those are capturing points and one team will come out winning. In these games, you might succeed, you might not succeed the mission, but if you stayed alive and you come back next time, you have another chance to try the same thing or something new. All right? And why is it worth visiting an Airsoft LARP event like these as a LARP organizer? You can see some logistical challenges because there are a lot of props and there are a lot of people who are being moved from one place to the other. And that's can be a really good experience for other organizers as well. You can have a chance to learn how to use radios and maps, because that's not really a thing that everybody knows by heart. But there's a chance you can try it out on these games, and we use them a lot. You can get ideas about using masks or props or other things like what I showed you, syringes and so on. And I don't think we had any pictures here, but the creatures look amazing because they look authentic. And that's one thing that you need to go there and see yourself. And to be honest, you can get to know brand new people. And I think a lot of us who play Airsoft LARP games are happy to try out other types of LARPs. This applies for me, and this is how I went for my first fantasy game as well. I met people on Airsoft LARP events. So I want to, we still have a couple of minutes left, so if you have any other questions you want to ask me about this event, please go ahead. Absolutely.
Okay, so you mentioned you started LARPing after Airsoft. Did you return back to pure Airsoft games after you started LARPing?
Yes, I did. And the reason for that is it can be treated as a training per se, like a physical training, because if you go and play CQB, that's really fast-paced. It starts 3 or 4 hours long, but I look at it like a training, you know, to get into a little shape per se. And there are some times when there are no LARP Airsoft games or no LARP games happening, so I usually go and play other type of Airsoft games as well. Did I answer your question?
I think yes, I'm rethinking because I noticed that for me, for example, it's hard to prioritize. Airsoft is totally different thing from LARP, and they're totally different genres.
Mm-hmm.
They have the midpoint called Stalker,
All right.
for example, or my match, we have it here. And that's the middle ground with weird boundaries. No one knows what are they exactly and where they end and where they start, but they're somewhere around. And I've seen airsofters going to LARP games that they're purely confused how to act. I've seen LARPers going to airsoft game trying to LARP there,
Mm-hmm.
which is confusing for everyone. And I'm interested to see how different people are coping with that and how that happens for others.
All right. So this is a learning experience, and this will not go, you know, if you start out learning LARPing, it's not gonna go, one day you start, the second day you're an expert. I think if you want to learn how to LARP, you have the ability to go after that knowledge, what's needed for this. And then you can use that in an Airsoft setting or an Airsoft LARP game as well, and be better and better. And then you can teach others how to do business. You know, honestly, you pick up a character and let's say you are a scientist in these games, because there are some scientists. Their whole idea is they need to do measurements, they need to put together certain equipment to make sure something doesn't happen. What they can do is they can hire other stalkers, and the stalkers can then act as bodyguards, and it's on them. So everybody needs to be responsible for their own LARPing, but then feedback can be given, you know, either after the game or, you know, a few days after the game. And I think there's a chance that people will learn and grow if we try to do this more and more.
In larger scale games of Airsoft, like for example Border Wars,
All right.
there's always a LARP faction existing, LARP village, where some players are free to sign up and play role play there for all the airsofters. But it's something like a bit weird because LARPers are like staged in theater for all airsofters who came to play. And that's a huge problem because a LARPer can really give a lot to a game, but it's never implemented really good. And in my community, it's absolutely the same problem. Last year we had 3 people LARPing or trying to LARP because they've never did it before, not outside of Airsoft context. And instead of coming to our camp and acting as actual villagers around in the middle of in a conflict, they just came and they were goofy and they were talking about sex and sheep and.
I see your point. So, as I said, I'm part of an Airsoft team, and inside there, I try to be the one who try to guide other people how to do a better job of that. If you go and play a villager in an Afghan village, for example, how to act like that and what to do. And this can confuse a lot of people, because last time when this happened, our task was, as the military, to make sure we secure this village. And we went in and we made sure we did what a military should do, you know, surround them, checked everything, went through. And they were surprised that we did not really interact with them through talking. But again, we don't talk the same language. And we had an interpreter who was that way 20 meters. So what can you do? You do what a military person would do in this situation, and that's of the LARPing, and try to solve this conflict. Yes?
These elements are basically the LARP elements.
Yeah, I know.
Airsoft, but Border War, I know that the game element, and this is very, very different from these. So, yeah, I heard there is a problem that so it's problematic to have this LARP camp, and outside this camp, nothing good is happening. So, yeah.
I'm just trying to think, to leave a question to thinking how we can implement one to the other. I know the difference between Stalker, Border War, and Fantasy LARP. I've been to all of these different events. Just I want to think the question inside the community, if it's interested, everyone who's interested in it, because it's a playground to open to
Everyone.
and we can do it better, I think. Worldwide, not just locally in small communities.
If I may add something, I think the problem with Airsoft LARP is that many people don't really know what exactly LARP is, and they say that, and I'm not meaning Agri Airsoft, but other people other organizers who just say that this is a LARP, and by LARP they mean that some people put up a Hawaiian shirt and a hat, and then it's LARP. So actually, it's not a lot. It's not a lot. It's just some factions have goofy dress code, and then it's not, but it's not. So I think maybe the confusion lies here sometimes. That for example, I'm admin for a site like this, and I usually decline such games because they say it's a LARP game, but actually they have their yellow and red signs for their
Different factions.
the outlet. Yeah. So that's all. But they think that